Okay, friends, once more, my name is John. I'm the pastor here at Foundation, and today we are beginning a brand new message series entitled The Next Kind Thing. This is a series that takes seriously the idea that kindness can change everything. If we are kind, we can make an impact that ripples beyond what we can see or even what we know within this world. But first, we actually need to be kind. Now, to help us talk about this today, I'm going to be reading you a very, very short passage of Scripture. It's all of one verse. It comes from the book of Proverbs. I'll be reading from Proverbs chapter 17, verse 11. And while I'm reading it, we're going to actually put it up on the whole screen so you can see it really well. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. Okay, friends, those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. Now, I'm going to break this verse down, specifically looking at three words. And the first word is maybe the most important one. It's that word kind. I want to take a moment and explore what does that mean to be kind. As a matter of fact, that's our very first question. The question is, what does it really mean to be kind? Take a second and actually comment down below. What does that mean to be kind? Does it mean to be generous? Does it mean to be friendly? Does it mean to be nice? Maybe something entirely different, but go ahead and answer down below if you would. So look, I may have cheated a little bit. When I first began to think about this, what does it mean to be kind? I immediately went to Google and I immediately Googled the definition. And the dictionary definition of kind or kindness is to be friendly, to be generous, and to be considerate. Friendly, generous, and considerate. And I feel like that's a pretty good definition, but it turns out that the word that we're talking about here, kind, and we're going to be looking at throughout this series, is actually based on a biblical word, hesed. It's this Hebrew word, H-E-S-E-D, or sometimes you'll see it spelled C-H-E-S-E-D. And that's because hesed is this Hebrew concept that encompasses kindness, but maybe goes a little bit further than what English kind means. So for instance, that biblical concept of kind or hesed, it literally is translated loving kindness, but maybe a really helpful way to think about it and to remember it is faithful love in action. Faithful love in action. And I think that's going to be helpful to us as we're talking about what does it mean to be kind, what is the next kind thing in our lives, what is kindness all about. Faithful love in action is going to get us really far. But look, I want to move on from that word to the second word that I wanted to focus on, and that word is benefit. Those who are kind benefit themselves. Well, what does that word benefit actually mean? And as we're looking at it, it turns out that that word can be translated to reward, but it also is an agricultural term that's talking about fruit and vegetables and a harvest, and it can be translated to ripen. And I thought that was really cool because it turns out that in order for something to ripen, it takes time. It doesn't happen immediately. It's not instantaneous. And so if we're talking about a benefit connected to kindness, the reality is it doesn't always happen instantly. It's not an immediate kind of thing. Sometimes it takes time. With that thought in mind, the kindness benefit sometimes takes time. It's not always immediate. The second question I have for all of you to, again, comment down below. Give me your answers down below. The question is, what are the benefits of kindness? Or maybe there's just one in your mind. What is the benefit? But what are the benefits of kindness? Go ahead and take a second and answer down below if you would. All right. Hopefully you've at least begun to start writing. Keep typing, keep writing, continue to converse with each other down below, but I'm going to give you my best pastor answer. Now, I say this is my best pastor answer because pastors, a lot of times, we like to work in threes, and we always like to start with the same first letter. And so the three benefits of kindness that I'm going to suggest to you today are friends, favor, and fulfillment. Friends, favor, and fulfillment. The first one, friends, I think is obvious, right? If you're kind, people are going to want to be around you. They're going to want to be your friend. The second one, favor, I think that one's pretty obvious too. It turns out that if we treat others as we want to be treated, others will reciprocate, right? If we're kind to people, they will be kind in return. And sometimes that means that if I go out of my way to help you, you're going to later be willing to go out of your way to help me. There's some favor involved. But the last one, I think, is actually the most important benefit of kindness, and that is fulfillment. I'm convinced that all of us have been created with a desire to help, to make a difference, to impact the world for the better. And I think that kindness gets us there. And so if we are kind, we're going to find ourselves being fulfilled, feeling like we are fulfilling our purpose in this world. Again, friends, favor, fulfillment. Look, I want to look at the very last word, and actually, I said I'm going to look at 3 words. This word's in there twice, so maybe we're talking about 4 words. I don't know. The word is themselves. Themselves. We're told that those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. So I want to zero in on that word, themselves. That word, it turns out, it can be translated like living being, your physical body, but it can also be translated your soul and your spiritual self. And this word is meant to encompass not just the physical, not just the spiritual, not just the mental, not just the emotional, but the entirety of the person, your whole being, all of you. And this is not an uncommon concept, because it turns out that as people, we're not just physical, and we're not just spiritual, we're not just mental or emotional. We are all of that and more. And there are a lot of things in your life that if you focus in on this or that, it will not just impact your physical health or your mental health or your spiritual health, but your entire self. And that's what we're talking about here with kindness, is that if we are kind, it turns out that kindness gives life, while cruelty ruins it. Let me say that again. Kindness gives life, but cruelty ruins it. And so we want to remember that we want to bless ourselves as we're blessing others. The best way to do that, of course, at least according to the author of Proverbs, is to be kind. I want to kind of put all this together. I want to bring it all together in a nice, tidy little bow, but I really want to zero in on what I think is the most important thing that we're talking about, and that is this concept of kindness. And I think one way to do this is to begin to look at an example or concrete examples of what kindness looks like, an illustration of that within actual people we know. And so the third question I have for all of you, and I absolutely want you answering this question down below. As a matter of fact, this question is about a person, and I want you taking a moment and even tagging that person on Facebook so they know that you're talking about them, because this is only good, and people love it when you're saying good things about them. The question is, who's the kindest person you know? Who is the kindest person you know? Again, you want to comment their name down below, and you want to tag them so they know that you're talking about how kind they are. Go ahead and do that if you would. All right. So you heard me say earlier when we were talking about the definition of kind that I cheated a little bit. I went on Google and looked up the answer. Well, I'm going to cheat again here. I asked you who is the kindest person, singular, one, that you know. But I'm actually going to talk about 4 people, and it's partly because I think kindness is complicated. This is a complex concept that maybe is hard to clearly illustrate in just one person. So the first kindest person I know is my good friend Heather Kirchheimer. Now, I think for most people, when they encounter or interact with Heather, they would say that Heather is like sweet. She is kind. She is friendly. She is nice. And I think for a lot of us, this is what we immediately think of when we think of kindness. Sweet, kind, nice. Heather is incredibly sweet. Now, her teenage sons tell me that mom has a mean voice, or maybe it's a stern voice. I can't remember the exact definition. Robbie and William, what is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it is. Okay. So she has that voice. So obviously, those who know her know that she is not always sweet and nice, but she is mostly sweet and nice almost all the time. Now, the second person I want to highlight for kindness here is somebody that I am very close with. And while other people might say, oh, this person is so sweet and so nice and so kind, I know the real truth. And that is, this person is my wife, Crystal. See, I know the real truth that Crystal isn't just sweet and nice. She is honest. And I think that honesty is an important part of kindness. It turns out that kindness isn't always saying yes. And it's not always telling people what they want to hear. Sometimes kindness is the ability to say what they don't want to hear. Let me give you an example. Sometimes I will dress myself. I will pick out an outfit. I will feel really good about it. I'll pick out the shirt and the pants and the shoes. I'll put it all together, and I will come to my wife and I will say, honey, how does this look? And sometimes she will say, that looks great. And other times she won't even look up and she'll be like, good enough. But there are some times where she will look at me and she will say, that is not it. You need to go downstairs and change. Oftentimes it has to do with colors that don't quite work together, or maybe outfits that don't quite look right together. But it would be fundamentally and profoundly cruel if Crystal would let me go out dressed like that if I'm asking her how does it actually look, right? And so kindness isn't just being sweet, it's also being honest. Now, the third person I want to highlight is my own dad, my father. And I'm going to actually be tagging him down below because I know he's not watching this service, and I want to make sure he knows that I think he's one of the kindest people I know. And it's not that my dad is super sweet or he's super honest. I mean, he's sweet enough and he's plenty honest. But the aspect that I want to highlight in him is his wisdom. It turns out that kindness isn't just being sweet and honest. Kindness is knowing when to be sweet and when to be honest. You can't just be that person who walks around and just says, well, I just tell the truth. I say it like it is. Those people are not normally known as being kind people. But again, as we already said, you can't also be the person who just always says yes and always tells people what they want to hear. You have to have the wisdom to discern when to use one and when to use the other. And my father is one of the wisest people I know. And it's maybe because he's getting to be one of the oldest people I know. And I really hope he's here to hear that so that he can know that I just told him he was old, because that's funny to me. All right, moving on to the very last person, the last kindest person I know. And this is going to come as a shock to this person's sisters, and maybe even to some of this person's friends if they know him, because it turns out, sometimes our siblings and our family or our friends see us at our best and our worst. But kindness isn't just being sweet. It's not just being honest. It's not just having wisdom. It's also having a desire to utilize these things. And I'm going to suggest that that's thoughtfulness. And by far, one of the most thoughtful people I know is my 14-year-old son, Gideon. Let me give you an example of this. This year in cross country, Gideon was at a cross country race. It was just a miserable day, cold and rainy and muddy. And Gideon ran by far one of his best races of the year. Not only best times, but hit one of his best finishes as far as place-wise. He did awesome, excellent. And so after the race, we were all so excited, and Gideon went to go get his things among his teammates, and one of his teammates came up to him and said, hey, Gideon, how did you do today? What place did you finish in? And in my mind, I thought, this is an opportunity for my son to brag, for him to get to say, this is the place I finished in, and I did great. And instead, he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I remember from a distance seeing this and thinking, oh man, my little buddy is embarrassed by his performance. He thinks he should have done better. He feels bad about it. I'm going to need to pep him up. I'm going to need to encourage him later today. And I stood from a distance and I watched the exchange. They continued to talk, and Gideon got his stuff, and we got in the car. And I said to him, Bud, you did really good today. He's like, thanks. I thought I did pretty good today too, Dad. And I said, well, when your friend asked you how you did, why did you say, don't worry about it? You did good. As a matter of fact, you did better than that person. You should have told him. And he said, well, here's the thing, Dad. There was another guy that was right next to me, and he had just got done telling me how he felt pretty bad about his performance, and I just didn't want to make him feel any worse. I didn't want to rub it in. And all of a sudden, I realized that my little buddy, my little Gideon, that little guy who's not so little anymore, while I was worried that he needed a pep talk, he needed to be encouraged, the reality was that maybe I needed to learn a little bit from him, because it never crossed my mind that he would not want to talk about how he did because he was worried he'd make someone else feel bad. And so I lift up these four people, again, Heather, Crystal, my dad, Dan, and my little buddy, Gideon, to highlight these four aspects of true, real kindness. And again, that's what most of us think of: sweet, friendly, nice, but then also honest. Kindness isn't always a yes. Sometimes it's a no. Sometimes it's a go change before you go in public. That's actually the kindest thing. Of course, kindness requires the wisdom to know when to do both of those, and ultimately the thoughtfulness to be willing to consider that, to even think about it and to apply those lessons. I'm going to suggest to you that these things make up what's real, true kindness. Now, this may feel complicated. It may feel a little difficult. And let me be honest with you, kindness is complicated. It varies from person to person and from time to time, from circumstance to circumstance. Kindness is complicated. But kindness is always a blessing. Always a blessing, both to you for striving for it and to those around you. And so what I want you to ponder, this is not a question to type down below and to answer, but for you to think about, for you to consider. And the question I want you to ponder is, what does kindness look like in your life? What does it look like for you to really, truly be kind? Not just kind once in a while, but kind all the time. Not just kind to the people you like, but kind to the people who are hard to be kind to. What does kindness look like in your life? As you continue to think about that this week, I want to let you know that we're going to continue this series. Again, the series is The Next Kind Thing. It's built around the reality that kindness changes everything. Kindness can transform the world if we're willing to put forth the work, if we're willing to do it. With that said, I'm going to invite you to join me in prayer. God, thank you for those people that you put into our lives who model kindness, who encourage us and lift us up, for those who challenge us and push us to be better. Lord, help us to continue to grow in our kindness, even when it's complicated, that we might find ourselves being blessed and blessing others. In Jesus' name we pray.